This is how the birth of Jesus Christ came about. When his mother Mary was betrothed to Joseph, but before they lived together, she was found with child through the Holy Spirit. Joseph, her husband, since he was a righteous man, yet unwilling to expose her to shame, decided to divorce her quietly. Such was his intention when, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary, your wife, into your home, for it is through the Holy Spirit that this child has been conceived in her. She will bear a son, and you are to name him Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins." All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. "Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall name him Emmanuel," which means God is with us. When Joseph awoke, he did as the angel of the Lord had commanded him and took his wife into his home. He had no relations with her until she bore a son, and he named him Jesus. The Gospel of the Lord.
On June 23rd of 2018, the Wild Boars youth soccer team from northern Thailand had just finished a routine practice session. They were riding their bikes home along with their assistant coach when the group decided to take a detour so they could explore Tham Luang Cave, which is a popular tourist attraction in that region of Thailand. And the sign outside of the visitor center to the cave indicated that the cave system was closed to visitors as it was currently the rainy season in Thailand. During the months of June all the way through October, unpredictable weather and sudden monsoons could cause all sorts of treacherous conditions within the narrow passages. And because the mouth of the cave was kind of on the side of this mountain, and slanted downwards into the depths of the earth, in the event of any rainfall, water would begin to collect inside of the caves as if it were sort of a drainage pipe. Nevertheless, the assistant coach and the rest of the Wild Boar soccer team, they ignored the warning signs and decided to venture over 2 miles into the Tham Luang cave system. And mere hours after their impromptu expedition began, something totally unpredictable, but at the same time very predictable, happened. A heavy monsoon rain fell across the entire side of the mountain, and immediately the cave system began to flood rapidly. And later that afternoon, the mother of one of the boys on the soccer team reported her son missing. He never showed up back home, so she reported him missing, and after a brief search by the local authorities, the 12 bicycles and the bicycle of the assistant coach were found outside of the entrance to the cave. Even more concerning was the fact that they found footprints and handprints in the muddy area at the cave's edge. So they knew that these guys are in there and they haven't come out. And everyone in the region knew how treacherous this cave system could be if it rained. So they feared that the worst had happened to this soccer team. It would have been incredibly easy for them to have gotten stuck in one of these low areas, one of these tunnels where they could have immediately been overcome by water. And many in the local community began to keep a vigil at the cave's entrance. Nevertheless, a small group of Thai Navy SEALs were brought into the caves in order to track the boys down. So during the course of a week, they tried over and over again to venture further and further into the cave system, but they kept coming up against endless obstacles. The water was so murky inside of the cave that even an artificial light source could not illuminate through the darkness. The passages were so incredibly narrow that it made even getting scuba gear through almost impossible. It was almost impossible to fit the gear through the crevices. And in some areas of the cave, sections as long as multiple football fields had been completely submerged in water. So on July 2nd, which was over a week after their disappearance, a diver happened upon the 12 boys and their coach. They were all alive, but they were very weak. They were dazed and confused, having spent day after day in pitch blackness, huddled together on this small, elevated rock, really just in a sea of floodwater. The search mission had been accomplished, but the rescue mission had just begun. During their 9 days in this state of oblivion, the team had frantically tried to chisel away at the ceiling of the chamber they were in, at the roof of the cave, in order to try to reach the surface. And little did they know, they were actually thousands of feet below the highest point of the mountain into which the cave system penetrated. Even experienced excavation teams were not able to dig through the mountainside. So while a diver was sent to bring the team food and clean water, and even to provide for them some entertainment, I guess even young boys get bored in a situation like this, the rest of the world was putting their collective heads together to try to figure out how on earth do we get these boys out of this cave. So during the week that followed, more than 10,000 people, including 100 divers, scores of rescue workers, representatives from over 100 governmental agencies, 900 police officers, and 2,000 soldiers all came to the entrance of the cave, of Tham Luang Cave, and tried to put together a rescue operation, try to figure out what they were going to do. The side of the mountain was way too enormous to dig through. The volume of water inside the cave, it was just too great in order to empty out in a timely manner. And the end of the rainy season was way too far in the future in order to expect that perhaps the waters would recede. Crazy schemes as elaborate as developing a sort of lifeline or a pipeline that would reach the boys in order to bring to them sustenance and fresh air were discussed but ultimately abandoned as being very impractical. And to make matters worse, a water main breakage outside of the cave flooded all of the area groundwater, which made the water inside of the cave, the water levels, actually raise at a level of up to 50 centimeters per hour. And add to this the threat that there had been predicted another major rainstorm to hit that area at any moment. And all of a sudden, what was a rescue operation became a race against time. Finally, it was decided the only way to get these boys out of this cave was to just go in there and get them. So that's exactly what happened. A team of 13 international divers, including experts, scuba experts from Britain and Australia and some of the Thai Navy SEALs, they began this very elaborate underwater rescue mission. It would require them to carry out each one of the boys one at a time in a process that took several hours apiece and actually required almost an even longer time to reset in between each rescue. It was incredibly difficult and unbelievably dangerous. Each boy actually had to be sedated beforehand so they wouldn't panic during this multiple-hour underwater journey through darkness, being tugged along by a team of divers through this rocky labyrinth of the cave. 2 of the divers actually died as a result of the operation. By the 10th of July, 17 days after the monsoon trapped the soccer team more than 2.5 miles in the depths of the earth, all 12 boys and their coach had been rescued. In the end, thousands of people stood outside the edge of that mountain, that cave, and they tried everything they could to lend a lifeline to those boys. But when it came down to it, they just had to go in there and get them. They had to go in and get them, even though it was going to be costly. They had to go into the darkness themselves, into the danger themselves, reach the boys in this place of darkness and bring them back into the light. There's an old saying that goes, if you happen to be walking along, say, a trail in the woods, and you come across someone who's trapped in a pit, don't tell them how to get out, but go down into the pit with them and show them how to get out. No ropes, no words, just go down into the depths with that person who's trapped, who's hurting, who feels abandoned, and show them the way out. Today, as a church, we celebrate the day that God himself went into the depths, climbed into the pit, ventured into the darkness, found us, stayed with us, and gave us a way out. Yes, we deserve to be down here. Our first ancestors, they ignored the warning signs at the beginning of the cave. They knew that the monsoons were coming, but they chose to be masters of their own will rather than to listen to the words of the one who loved them enough to tell them no. No, Adam and Eve, they fell from grace. Our first ancestors in this human race, they fell away from friendship with God. They fell into the darkness of sin, the loneliness of separation. And ever since that moment, the drama of human history has been a rescue mission, the story of God saving humanity. First, it plays out a little bit like this incident with the soccer team trapped in the cave. Lifelines are sent, messengers are appointed, words of instruction and encouragement are given, but none of it is able to actually save the boys. This is the entire history of the Old Testament. Prophets of God are sent to the people of Israel in order to call them out of the darkness. God gives the law to Moses to hand on to the people so the people will know how to be saved from their sin. God stands at the edge of the pit and he looks down at the people that he loves and he lowers ropes. He extends his hand. He tells us exactly what we need to do to climb out of this horrible place that we've put ourselves in, but we don't listen. We don't listen. So he comes in after us, a rescue operation. Jesus Christ, Emmanuel, God with us, is born into this world through the Virgin Mary. He stays with us. He comforts us in our affliction. He acknowledges that we're hurting, and then he says, "You're coming with me. I'm getting you out of here." And he doesn't put scuba gear on to rescue us. He mounts the wood of the cross. He makes himself a sacrifice for the reconciliation between God and man. He takes every single one of us and brings us from darkness into light. That's what we celebrate today. That is Christmas. Lest you ever forget that Jesus was here, that he loves you, that he rescued you. Lest you ever look at the pain or the anxiety or the depression or discomfort or fear that you feel in your daily lives and think, God, what gives? You've left me behind. You forgot to take me with you. Lest you're ever tempted into thinking that God has no use for you and no desire to be close to you. Remember what we celebrate every single day here on this altar, the Eucharist. The Eucharist, the true presence of Jesus Christ here with us every day, body, blood, soul, and divinity, right here in this church. There's our rescuer, right here. Right here. He's not going anywhere. He's already saved every single one of us by his death and resurrection. Now he's here to make sure that every single one of us latches onto him and allows ourselves to be pulled up daily from darkness into light. I know that some of you here, many of you here, may be present in this church for the first time in years, perhaps more than one. It's been a bumpy road, huh? Maybe you've lost loved ones. Maybe you've lost job. Maybe you've lost your peace of mind. Maybe you've just lost a desire to practice your Catholic faith. Maybe you're just sick of being alone in the darkness, chiseling away at the roof of a cave that you have no ability to break through on your own. Jesus is your way out. Receiving the Eucharist is your way out. Jesus is bringing you through the gift of his body and blood from the depths of darkness into a renewed creation, into a heavenly homeland. And perhaps the most beautiful thing about that is that he's urging each of us to follow his lead every single day, to live this sort of incarnational spirituality every day of our lives, to go about our lives always looking for the lowest places, the dark places, the places where floodwaters have come and rendered people trapped, alone, abandoned, to reject the temptation to simply pass by and say, whatever, I don't care, better these people than me, but rather to climb down into those places, to be with those people, our friends, our family members, people who are struggling, even if we think that these people are totally responsible for ending up where they are. God only knows that we too are totally responsible for ending up where we are. The waters of a monsoon, they flow to the lowest places, but God too goes to the lowest places, and so should we. This life is a rescue operation. Jesus has come for you, he's found you, he's stayed with you, and he's bringing you with him. Rejoice.